Okay, guys. All right, just a quick heads up. The video I did before this, the signal was cut. I thought it would be cut. That's why I put in the thumbnail, essentially warning, removal situation. I was talking about essentially records and how, the court systems would essentially seal them off. I didn't show any information that would be illegal or improper. I did cut out basically the little warning labels they put on it to show you essentially what they put inside the PACER system, but we didn't go over anything that was illegal or improper. However, I did know, and I felt very strongly that they were going to cut essentially my connection on that video. So if you want to go see it, it is the video we did before this. Now, with that said, we are going to be going through essentially more fraud and abuse committed by federal employees with the federal government. And one of the things that you need to keep in mind is that these OIG hot sheets are essentially snippets of what actually is in the complaint. They usually do not have lots and lots of information, and that's because they might have to arrest more people related to this in the future. Usually by the time I give you this news, they've already collected and basically arrested the individual related to the problems at hand. In this case, there's essentially 4 defendants, including 2 former U.S. Postal Service employees charged in connection with scheme to steal $80 million in U.S. Treasury checks. Now, the thing you need to keep in mind is that we tend to talk about things that are breaking news, right on the line, happening immediately. This was June 11th. Okay, so this was like yesterday. All right, and so the bottom line here is sometimes we have to be careful with what we go over. So I am trying to be careful so that nothing slips out related to a complaint that I might have read, and I try to stick to the script of what they've allowed to go ahead and release. Now, let's get through this real quick. This is Philadelphia. United States Attorney David Metcalf announced that Tahi Tucker, 23, young person, of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Corey Scott, 25, of Ardmore, Pennsylvania, and Alexander Telewoda, 25, of Clifton Heights, Pennsylvania, were arrested and charged by superseding indictment with conspiracy to steal government funds, theft of government funds, and mail theft arising from a multi-million-dollar scheme to steal U.S. Treasury checks from a local U.S. Postal Service facility and then resell those checks to purchasers around the country. A 4th defendant, Sahir Irby, 27, of Philadelphia, was also charged with these offenses in addition to a previously charged count of mail theft. So put it another way, remember when they steal these and they sell them and they're doing this illegal business, this is like work. And work should be taxed by Social Security using FICA taxes. So when they do this stuff, this U.S. Treasury, check theft and stuff, when they're doing basically fraud like this, they're frauding the Social Security Administration's, trust funds because money isn't being put into them because there's no taxation of FICA taxes towards essentially what business they're doing. So it's a Social Security fraud thing that is a problem, and it's not good. All right. The superseding indictment alleges that between June 2023 and September 2024, Irby and Tucker, while working at USPS mail processing clerks, stole thousands of envelopes containing U.S. Treasury checks from mail sorting machines at the USPS Philadelphia Processing and Distribution Center. Okay, so when you're a federal employee, you obviously have access to a lot of things that potentially could be worth something. Sometimes they're an instrument, kind of like a check, where they can get a hold of them, and then they try to move them out of the building by hiding things, putting them in bags of sorts, putting them on their body, putting them in places, you know what I mean? And as a result, they get them out of the building. Okay, according to the indictment, Irby and Tucker removed the checks from the USPS facility and sold them to defendants Scott and Telewoda, who then advertised the stolen checks for resale on the cloud-based instant messaging application Telegram. So you got a classic thing here. They're stealing stuff that's not theirs from the U.S. government that they work for, the USPS that they got it out of the building from. And then they hand it over to these other better criminals, right, who know how to, make money as a criminal, not just the people sourcing it, but the people who actually get it out there. And then at that point, it's a situation where, to be fair, right, then at that point, these things are getting sold to other people, more nefarious things occur, etc. Oh, look at that, Ricky C. Very cool. The first super chat on live stream. Thank you. That's a 99-cent donation. I absolutely love it. That's very, very cool. So I love the little happy face there. It kind of cheers me up a little bit. I see Anna Hempel right there. I see Kathy Hankins, Kosherish, Princess Diana. Howdy, howdy. So let me kind of go through this real quick. All right. So over the course of the scheme, the indictment alleges Irby and Tucker sold Scott and Tellerwood thousands of stolen treasury checks whose face value exceeded $80 million. Okay. So we got two USPS young federal employee kids who then steal enough of these U.S. Treasury checks for $80 million worth of potential face value to enter into the marketplace, of all these criminals, right? Okay. Scott's and Telewoda's customers successfully negotiated approximately 11 million worth of these stolen treasury checks at financial institutions. Irby is also charged with a separate instance of mail theft involving another batch of treasury checks that he allegedly stole and sold to an unnamed individual in August of 2024. So in other words, they either don't know who it is or they're not putting it in this document, because this is a press release. I'm allowed to read these. I can't read you the sealed complaints and stuff. So the bottom line is, just to be clear with this whole situation, okay, when you look at this whole thing, okay, they got 11 million through the goalie. Okay, so they were able to basically get 11 million through before the federal government figured it out, got on them, etc. So, you might be sitting there going, well, does this system work? Does OIG work? Does, these federal departments that find these fraudsters, does it work? It does work. It's just, they got to build a claim. It takes time. It's one of those situations. So they were able to get 11 million through into the criminal market of 80 million potential. Now, the question then becomes, do they know of the 80 million that are remaining that got out, what the numbers on those checks were to go ahead and, not allow this to get worse? Okay. So that's kind of where we're at with this, right? If convicted, Irby faces a maximum possible sentence of 25 years imprisonment, 3 years of supervised release, and $1 million fine. And Tucker Scott and Telewoda each face a maximum possible sentence of 20 years imprisonment, 3 years of supervised release, and a $750,000 fine. Now, look, let's just be fair here. They're young. They might be able to pay off that $1 million fine and that $750,000 fine. Okay, they might be able to do it over their life, over the expense of their life. I doubt it. If they were working at USPS, right? And, maybe they don't have other skills and now they're going to jail. I doubt it. They're probably not, but maybe. You never know. They might have a hit song, or they might win the lottery, whatever. You never know. So do you guys feel that if you worked in USPS and you stole that many treasury checks and it turned out to be 80 million in face value, do you feel that they should be getting 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 25 years, 20 years? What do you feel would be appropriate? To me, like, if somebody intentionally kept stealing from the federal government, the thing that I pay for in my taxes, the thing that, like, I need it to work properly so that it can establish a giant military, protect me from all the bad things that are out there, allow commerce to continue. The thing, you know what I mean? Like, search the stars. They stole from the thing I've been paying for my entire life. So my point to you is, to me, when you intentionally do something like that, I remember the arguments they're going to make is that they were a different person and they've changed over time. They got an education while in, prison. They're now, living a new life. They found God, yada, yada, all of these things, right? All these traditional arguments that come in a suit and they're trying to argue on their behalf and saying they're a better person. Now, what do you think should be acceptable? I'm seeing a lot of people saying 20 years. I would say 15 years to 25 years, to me, would be acceptable for this situation. But let me just throw in there, because I know how some of you guys are very financially conscious, okay? What do we do with them? Because if we got to pay for them for 20 years, that means we're paying a lot of tax money to pay to feed this person who we already lost a ton of money to. Some of you will say, well, perhaps an even worse penalty. Perhaps something that's a life sentence, but then we got to pay a lot. Perhaps even worse than that. Perhaps the life doesn't continue. The problem we run into is that we just keep getting really full prisons. And that's because there's a lot of criminals, and that's because the criminals find a way to get away with abusing these supposed to be protected institutions. Now, Princess Diana 62, super thank you for the $1.99 donation. Super appreciate that. Okay. So here's the thing I want you to realize with this. They caught him. It took them a little while, but they caught him. If they didn't catch him, they would have got another 70 million into the criminal market. And remember, that criminal market, that's a marketplace that helps fund really bad people. I mean, we're not talking about criminals that are, basically drinking too much and, they find them and they get into a bar fight and nobody really gets hurt. We're talking about people who, do bad things to a lot of bad people or do bad things to a lot of good people or whatever mixture you want. Okay, we're talking about the real bad stuff. And when you fund that marketplace with 80 million potential dollars, you've essentially massively armed a criminal sector against what's supposed to be the good guys in this situation. So let's keep reading. This case was investigated by the United States Postal Service of Inspector General, United States Postal Inspection Service, Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration, Homeland Security Investigation, the FBI, the Social Security Administration Office of Inspector General, with substantial assistance from the Montgomery County Detective Bureau, the Lower Merion Township Police Department, the Bureau of Fiscal Service. This case is being prosecuted by Assistant United States Attorney Jessica Rice. The charges and allegations contained in the indictment are merely accusations. Every defendant is presumed to be innocent unless and until proven guilty in court. All right, so what I want to point out before we go to, and we're going to actually cover some more fraud in this video, but I thought it was very important to point out essentially what's happening here. We have actual federal employees. When they sign that paper that they're going to go ahead and work for the federal government, their thing is they are not going to scam the government. They are not going to fraud the government. What do we do? Because at the end of the day, we have a problem here. We know, number one, that two people, not just one, but two people were able to work in concert with stealing a lot of treasury checks. And as a result of this, right, these treasury checks, 80 million potential face value got out there, which means that they had been doing it for a very, very long time. Because you remember, to have that many treasury checks, you can't just like throw that sucker in a cargo pant and get out of there. You just can't. Like, that's not how it works. You know what I mean? So the bottom line that I want you to understand, the bottom line that I need you to kind of comprehend with this whole situation is the following, okay? When at the end of the day, we have government systems that are able to leak information from bad actors, we have a problem. And there's no way to protect all of your stuff or your money or your information, because the people we hire into these positions are committing fraud and not doing what they're supposed to do. And there's no way to make a perfect, squeaky clean system. There's just no way. In this case, 80 million face value got out the door. That's a lot. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of potential money. In my opinion, we have to find a way to essentially make the system work more for civilians that are basically, disabled, retired, but also the working class. A lot of you don't realize, but when this happens and all that, quote unquote, easy money gets out there, that means a lot of people that woulda, shoulda, coulda been working and paying FICA taxes for your retirement, your disability benefits, they're not going to be doing that. So you have an army of people not paying Social Security taxes who are now getting this money and doing illegal things with it. And so the problem is, all of a sudden, we now realize that, crime, while ultimately it pays in the beginning, but ultimately it doesn't pay, the problem is the numbers are too big. If two young USPS guys can pull a heist of $80 million face value, then what else could they steal? Did you ever stop and think about that? Like the little hierarchy of people that work for the government. You get to like the Secret Service, and that's like the ultimate protecting our president, the ultimate, the top, the best that we have, right? Your 6 foot guy, 6'5" super soldier dudes, you know what I mean? Right? It's not a lot of my Jewish people on the Secret Service. There's not a lot of us on there. We just don't meet the build requirements, you know what I mean? But the bottom line is, right? That's the best. That's what we trust with our most sacred commodity. That's our most sacred commodity in this entire situation, right? The President of the United States, the leader of the country. You could say it's the Constitution, but you know what I mean? They've got that covered with different people and different agencies, etc. So to be fair, with this whole thing, What do we do? I think realistically in the future, we're getting better at essentially tracking what people do on their computer screens. And I think COVID was a major push things forward for that. When people work from home or when they're in these power positions within the government where, not that USPS, is a power position, but it is. I mean, for them to sneak $80 million face value treasury checks out the door, you're in a power position. So from my perspective with this whole situation, we have to have more control over the federal employees. And to be fair, I think what's going to happen is we're going to see less and less and less crime. You know what I mean? Less and less and less crime because there's going to be more artificial intelligence just handling stuff. Some of you will say that's horrible. You hate it. I know I hate it. I had to call Texas DDS today, which is basically Disability Determination Services for Texas. And they didn't have anybody that could answer the phone. Nobody. And I tried different extensions. Nobody would answer the phone. And so the problem was I had to then send a thing to the regional office. Well, guess what? The regional office email no longer works. They killed it. So what we're starting to see is the Social Security Administration do this shrinking effect where there's just not people to answer the phones. And the emails that used to be to these Confix-It people, these fix-it departments, they're being killed off. So it's a tough situation because I think the Social Security Administration going to the future is going to be very likely upsetting a lot of people unless they get artificial intelligence really good, really fast to handle a lot of problems. Now, with that said, and I want to make this very clear, we're going to go through some additional people who committed Social Security fraud. And I want you to keep an open mind, but I want you to think about a couple things. Number one, were they a citizen? Number two, were they in a power position? Did they lead a company? Were they federal employees? Were they state employees? Were they city employees? Were they in a position of protection? You know what I mean? Do we have a factor of trust where we think they're going to magically take care of us? Because, to be honest, I don't think a lot of people believe the government's going to take care of us. But do we have an expectation, even if it's 1%, that they're going to not screw us over? Because, look, when two USPS 20-year-olds, right, can steal 80 million face value, you know what I mean? Shit, you know what I mean? Imagine how many checks that would be. You can't just shove those in a pocket and roll out you know what I mean? You're going to be doing it for a little while. You know what I mean? You're going to be, that's a side job. That's a courier job at that point. I mean, they could go get a job from FedEx if they got out of prison because they know how to haul. You know what I mean? So I guess what I'm saying is this, okay? And I'm not trying to, you know what I mean? So, okay, are they a civilian, a citizen of America? Are they in a trust position? Do they own a company? Do they work for the federal government or some government entity? Or are they an immigrant that's working on their naturalization? Or are they here illegally and they stole somebody's identifications, right? So the social security card, their IDs, their name, changed out the faces, took it to little Jimmy on the corner and got him to swap the cards out and put some new photo IDs in there. I want you to focus on that and ask yourself, who do we punish the most? Who do we punish the most? Because, if we punish the immigrants, they got to serve their time, then we kick them out of the country. So then we're making Americans have to pay for them for a really long time. But if we don't put them in prison, then they're not going to learn the lesson. Not that necessarily they always learn it. I'm not saying they always learn it. I'm just saying they're not necessarily going to learn it, but we got to pay for them. We got to pay for that person sitting in jail and prison and all that stuff. All right, here's the first one I want to go over other than that one. Hot sheet. Office of Inspector General just released on June 10th. Honduran national guilty of firearm possession. Honduran national guilty of firearm possession. New Orleans. That tends to be a hotbed. LA, New Orleans tends to be a hotbed for immigrants. Acting United States Attorney Michael M. Simpson announced that Josme Joshua Perez Alvarez, age 24, a native of Honduras, pled guilty on May 27th, 2025, before U.S. District Judge J.C. Zaney to being an illegal alien in possession of a firearm in violation of Title 18, United States Code Section 922G5A and 924A8. Okay, so first off, illegal immigrant possessing a firearm, not what we want to see in America, right? We want to see legal firearm ownership, legal concealed carry stuff. We want to see it legally done. You know what I mean? We want to see people trained. They know how to handle it. We want safety. We also don't want the government to encroach too much on that. You know what I mean? Sometimes the government is a little bit too pawy on that stuff. All right, here we go. According to court documents on or about January 2nd, 2025, Perez Alvarez, an individual unlawfully present in the United States, was found in possession of a Glock 9mm handgun and was arrested by authorities. Remember, this is Biden era. This is right before Biden passed the Social Security Fairness Act. Perez Alvarez admitted that he was unlawfully present at the time of the offense and due to his status was prohibited from possessing a firearm. Okay. Biden era. You can love Biden. You can hate Biden. I don't really care. You can love him or hate him. Not my problem. You can love him or hate him. Okay. Poor guy has cancer now. He had obviously medical conditions while he was in office, and they obviously hit a bunch of that stuff, but it is what it is. Poor guy at this point is not going to be in the limelight for a very long period. So the bottom line is this. Okay. Biden era, it was the worst vote farming immigration tactic that people will claim has ever happened in the United States, other than the United States basically being started. Because remember, everybody was an immigrant back then. All right. At sentencing, Perez Alvarez faces a maximum penalty of 15 years of imprisonment, up to a $250,000 fine, up to 3 years of supervised release, and a $100 mandatory special assessment fee. Woo! $100 mandatory assessment fee. Got to pay that special assessment fee. Sounds like California. All right. Fine. All right. So there you go. Sentencing is scheduled August 26, 2025. So a couple of months, they'll sentence him, right? You'll know exactly. Well, you won't, because they might seal this case. They might seal it. So what I want to ask you right now, and I want you to be real straight with me. I don't want you to BS me on this one. He's facing a maximum penalty of 15 years, potentially. Do you feel an illegal immigrant having an illegally obtained and possessed firearm, do you feel that this person should continue, after a short 5-year sentence, 10-year sentence? Do you feel that 15 years is appropriate? Do you think 12 is appropriate? Where do you feel the punishment should actually be? How bad should they hit this person? They've got to send a message, but we also don't want to pay for him too long, because the moment his sentence is done, he's being sent to, basically, Honduran national. So you know where he's going, So he's going to be exported out of the country because he committed a felony. So, bottom line here is, do you feel, you let me know. So Rude Rabbit says 2 years, then deport. Charlton Zimmerman says deport right away. I'm more of the thing where, like, you can deport somebody, but they usually make it back into the U.S., especially when, you have a blue president, I think 10 years would be appropriate. That's got a nice sting to it. And remember, he's 24. He gets out at 34. Well, I don't know. You tell me. You think he should get out maybe when he's like, 39? I don't know. You tell me. 39, you just lost the best years of your life. That's it. Between like 24 to 30 to 40, between like 20 and 40, that's like the best you got. You know what I mean? After that point, you got a lot of pains. Things stop working. Your hair just doesn't want to hang out with you anymore. The hell is that, right? Jeez. All right. Anyways, let me give you the rest of it. Acting U.S. Attorney Simpson praised the work of the U.S. Immigration, Customs Enforcement and Removal Operations, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, the Office of the Inspector General, Social Security Administration, the New Orleans Police Department for the roles in investigating this matter. Assistant United States Attorney Spiro G. Latsis of the General Crimes Unit oversees the prosecution. Now, look. Some of you are wondering, what does this have to do with Social Security? Well, when somebody is here illegally, right, or doing something illegal and not getting proper clearance because they don't have enough naturalization, that is a Social Security violation, because Social Security oversees Social Security numbers and naturalization, status, along with another agency. They work in tandem. So to me, this is a Social Security violation because it essentially allows somebody to be more dangerous and also defensive, where in this situation, we could have a citizen who decides not to own a firearm, and they would be at a huge disadvantage to this other person who could potentially harm them. I am curious, like, do you guys feel, and I'm just curious to see what you say in the top chat. Do you feel that people should be able to have firearms if they are not naturalized citizens in this country? Do you feel that citizens basically who are new immigrants that are working on naturalization, but they haven't really taken the test, gone through stuff, do you feel that they should be able to have firearms? I just, and I see Rodeo Clown Obama said no. Liz Delgado said no. I mean, kind of the bottom line here is, and then Douglas Navala said, I need to know the details on this guy. I'll look up his file later. I'll see if it's sealed. If it's not sealed, I'll do an update on it and give you the facts and, pull some of the stuff from online. But the bottom line is I have to be careful because sometimes the stuff isn't sealed yet, and then like a week later it gets sealed, and I just did a video on something that's supposed to be sealed. So I got to be careful with that stuff. Sunny D Badoop, thank you for the $5 donation. That is the 5th super on the live stream, which is absolutely awesome. Very, very cool. Thank you. That is actually my favorite YouTube name right there. Sunny D Badoop, I think, is clearly the winner. It is the blue ribbon of all the people with cool names on there. All right, with that said, this case is a part of the Operation Take Back America, a nationwide initiative that marshals the full resources of the Department of Justice to repel the invasion of illegal immigration, achieve the total elimination of cartels and transnational criminal organizations, the TCOs, and protect our communities from the perpetrators of violent crime. Operation Take Back America streamlines efforts and resources from the Department of Organizations, Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, OCD ETFs, and Project Safe Neighborhood PSN. So remember, Trump is going to advertise that he's trying to get rid of essentially these immigrants that have come in doing criminal activities. Here's my thing when it comes to this whole naturalization situation. A lot of people have committed crimes that were just crimes of being present and not being present legally. And then some of them have, they have illegal firearms. You know what I mean? It is clearly a crime, clearly way beyond. There's no argument there that they did something wrong and very, very bad. I guess what I'm wondering with you, and I know when I talk to people from like California or Washington, a lot of them that live in the cities, or any people that live in the cities have a very anti-firearm mentality usually. And it's interesting to talk to them because in their brain, if they don't have one and other people can't have one, then they won't have a problem with them, which I've always thought was weird because, again, a Honduran national is guilty of firearm possession. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to get them. You know what I mean? You can print them out of a machine. It's not like, you can't make them illegal because they're just going to make more of them. Like, the only people who are going to be punished are the people who stuck their head in the sand. So I guess from my perspective, where are you guys at on that? Do you feel like, and that's another great question. And then we'll go on to the next one, because at this time, there was a law that they came out with where they wanted to limit Social Security recipients who were disabled, who had mental impairments at listing level. Could be depression, anxiety, PTSD, personality disorder, could be an intellectual issue, right? What do you guys feel are the impairments that, are severe, marked, right? Medically marked, which is severe. What impairments do you feel, if they're really, truly severe, should be banned from having firearms? That was a question that they weren't willing to actually answer. They tried to make it where if you were found disabled for listing level criteria, mental impairments, that you would be barred from owning firearms. Do you guys think that essentially is so? Ironically, I saw a thing here real quick. Sadie Magoo said Doge caught them. Doge didn't catch them. It was actually Biden's administration that caught this person. But Doge is going to advertise, that they're working it. That's what the whole last paragraph here is: Doge advertising that they're on top of it. This case is part of Operation Take Back America. So my question to you is, do you feel that was correct, that there are some people who are mentally unsound to the point where they shouldn't own a firearm, even if they're citizens, even if they're getting a benefit from the federal government? Do you feel that there is literally a situation where people should be barred? And I think that that's tough. Do you feel, see now, Rebel with a cause, real quick. He said PTSD. Okay. Well, what happens if you have a female, right? A woman who was abused, right? Do you feel that, and she's somebody who's going to have that feeling of needing to be protected, needing to protect herself. Do you feel, because she has PTSD, that we should ban her from protection, self-preservation protection? Maybe, maybe not. You know what I mean? How bad is it? Is she always inside a mental facility where she's losing control? Is she in control of herself sometimes? What happens when she's not? It's a tough question. It's a really, really tough question. So another person said, what about schizophrenia, right? What about schizophrenia? So, let's talk about schizophrenia. Let's say that, somebody has the symptoms, and let's read them out so you can have an actual, some people, all right, hold on. Let me get the symptoms up here because I'm going to read them to you directly across. Hallucinations, seeing or hearing things that aren't real. Delusions, false beliefs. Disorganized thinking, your thoughts are all over the place. Okay, reduced expression of emotions, reduced motivation, and difficulty in social relationships, problems with memory, short-term and long-term, problems with attention, figuring out what's going on around you, and decision-making, analysis skills, knowing what you need to get done. If you have somebody that is schizophrenic, right, not just schizoaffective, but like schizophrenic, do you feel that they should be barred from being able to own a firearm? Do you think we should treat them when it comes to firearms like illegal immigrants where they shouldn't have access to them? Do you feel that that's something we should do? All right, let me give you another one. Personality disorder, right? They could have multiple personality disorder. They could have singular personality. Well, I mean, but the point is a personality disorder. Let me give you the symptoms real quick. Personality disorder, okay? Here we go. Personality disorder symptoms. I mean, I could just tell you. Here we go. All right, strange or unpredictable behavior. Suspicious and distrusting of others, including themselves, taking risks themselves. Extreme mood swings or emotional outbursts, difficulty with relationships, problems at school or work, need for instant gratification, immediate pleasure, immediate rewards, things like that. Okay. Do you think somebody who has, just to be fair, I'm not trying to call anybody out here, but do you think if somebody has a personality disorder, right, then that they should be barred from having firearms? Do you feel that that's an acceptable option? I don't know. I'm seeing no's. I'm seeing lots of no's. I see yes, very yes. Please forgive Walter. That's what Brett Monday said. Brett Monday, why do I need to be forgiven? Help me out with this. And please forgive Walter. What did I do now? I already had one video get cut off where they cut my signal. I'm seeing a lot of yeses. I'm seeing a Sonia saying depends. At what point would it depend? And at what point would be the flipping point, right? If you had two legal cases, one of them, right? It was somebody who had a personality disorder who thought they were somebody else, right? At what point do we say this person is not to be trusted with the capacity to end life easily? At what point do we say the case would flip? You know what I mean? And remember, once they, it could be they could. I thought I was in self-defense, right? They would say, I thought I was in self-defense because the person that is the personality, the person in my brain thought that. And then we have a jury or we have people there sitting there. Was it reasonable that person thought that they needed to use self-defense? But the problem is the person right over there that has the personality disorder, they might have not done something reasonable because they have a personality disorder. So at what point, voices in the head, ideation, stuff like that. At what point do we say somebody is not capable of having access to those things? Now Cheryl Kolek has what we currently have, which is a case-by-case scenario. And I think that's where it's going to stick, because I don't think any politicians are really going to be able to sell to the American public that, we're going to go ahead and ban guns for these people and these people, because, it's a slippery slope. The moment you start banning guns, sure, everybody can get behind illegal immigrants and say, no, they can't have them. But when you start banning guns for certain types of individual, or, people go onto a particular list, well, then real quick, we're putting a lot of people on a list that maybe shouldn't be on it. We all saw that a lot of political people, once Biden got in, a lot of political people on the right got put on those magic lists, and that was a problem because, some of them didn't deserve to be on it. And in our legal system, we would rather set a guilty person free, 10 of them, 20 of them, 100 of them, than potentially imprison a not guilty person. Because imagine the effect of that. If you imprison a not guilty person, you've just created a Marvel level adversary. You know what I mean? Somebody who, no matter what you do, is going to hate the system. All right. Next one. Office of Inspector General, Social Security Administration, Erie resident indicted on Social Security fraud charges. Let's see what this person did, okay? June 11th, 2025, hot news release, breaking news just released. A resident of Erie, Pennsylvania has been indicted by a federal grand jury in Erie on charges of theft of government property, Social Security fraud, and false statements to retain supplemental security income benefits. Acting United States Attorney Troy Rivetti announced today. Okay, so what we got here is an SSI fraud. Here we go. There's a 4-count indictment named Simone Rennell Carr, 59, as the sole defendant. So this 59-year-old, okay? The law provides for a maximum total sentence of up to 25 years in prison, a fine of up to $1 million or both under the federal sentencing guidelines. So they did something pretty serious here, because when they start whipping out the 25 years or the 1 million, that's something serious here. Let's see if they share it with us, because remember, this case has probably already been partially sealed, okay? Which is one of the problems, because that means I can't pull the complaint and read it to you because it is literally sealed, okay? And I literally, in the prior video I showed you, because I cut it out of stuff, essentially, what they say in those things. I can't show you the actual briefs, the complaints, the motions. I can't show them to you. All right. So law provides for a maximum total sentence of up to 25 years in prison, a fine of up to $1 million or both. Under the federal sentencing guidelines, the actual sentence imposed would be based upon the seriousness of the offenses and the prior criminal history, if any, of the defendant. Assistant U.S. Attorney Paul S. Sellers is prosecuting this case on behalf of the government. Social Security Administration Office of the Inspector General conducted the investigation leading to the indictment. An indictment is an accusation. A defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. You will notice with this case, they don't give you much meat. And that's because a lot of it has probably been sealed, okay? Why is this a problem? It's a problem because people who see this video never really get to know or understand what happens to these people or what they did. Some of them I can read. I can read them unless they basically have a warning label like this that says, statement of reasons sealed as to the person. Notice document is only available to applicable parties. Only authorized users can enter CME-CF filer login and password first for authentication, yada, yada, yada. So the bottom line is, I cannot give you what actually happens. And some documents, even I'm not allowed to access as an attorney, as America's most viewed and subscribed to disability attorney, okay? So the bottom line is this, okay? Fraud is happening all the time. You guys don't really get the full story because you're not allowed to see it because a lot of these cases get sealed. I think that that's a problem. I think that they should be unsealed after so much time, 6 months, a year, they get arrested, and then 6 months starts, Hey, let me ask you that. What do you guys think? Let's say that they arrest employees of the Social Security Administration who were handling fragile systems inside the SSA. They could have been a manager, they could have been, whatever, a lead worker, whatever, a supervisor. Let's say that they get arrested, and then at that point that they are arrested, right? Of course, they're not going to have people under a certain age, their names, they're not going to have that in there. Of course, they're not going to have certain Social Security Administration systems and the detail of how they work, and they're not going to have that. At what point do you think they should unseal that record so that you can actually learn about what that person did and how many years they're getting? Do you think it should be 6 months? Do they, okay, so Rebel with a Cause said unsealed after conviction. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't see a problem with that. I don't think that's bad. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I see a bunch of things here. It's not, somebody's talking about wasp spray after conviction. I guess that kind of makes sense. I feel like, so, okay, here's my thing. Because here's one thing that you may not be thinking about, okay? And please remember to like and subscribe, because we only got 335 likes right now. Please hit that like button. Please hit the subscribe button, because otherwise people aren't going to get to learn about what's actually going on with Social Security fraud. They're not going to get to learn about this stuff, and they need to know about it because it's important. So here's my thinking, okay? Patty Heron said, why should that information be sealed? Should never be sealed. Sometimes it's sealed because, there's people that are under a certain age. Sometimes it's sealed because they talk about, basically information about systems at the SSA that they don't want getting public. Sometimes it's sealed because they're trying to arrest the person and they don't want the person getting a heads up because the person might try to flee. Sometimes they seal them because there's other parties that they're looking into that they haven't figured out if they're going to arrest them yet. And if they get an attorney and they go into the PACER system and they look into it and they go, oh, look at this, they're coming for you, then they might get a heads up and leave the country. So they seal it for different reasons. I think that directly after conviction is too soon. And here's my reasoning. Usually when they go to convict somebody, right, they're collecting information through the process, and sometimes stuff squeaks through farther down the line. Okay. Stuff like, they'll learn something new. Some witness will come forward. Somebody will tattletale on somebody. Some ex-wife, some ex-husband will get angry because their new boyfriend or girlfriend said, well, you should tell them about that. And then information ends up with law enforcement. In that situation, they might not have all the information by the actual conviction date. They might need another 6 months. They might need another 12 months to go ahead and see who else, who else might have been involved with this situation. So I guess my point here is, I think it's important. At the end of the day, I think the main thing that you need to kind of keep in mind is that I think we need to give law enforcement at least 6 months, at least 12 months to clean up the loose strings. Because they might find somebody that was a key person, like this first case that we talked about over here, right? This first case where you got basically 2 USPS employees, over basically a long period of time, basically stealing, banknotes, federal banknotes. I mean, this guy right here, 4 defendants, including 2 former U.S. Postal Service employees, charged in connection with a scheme to steal 80 million U.S. Treasury checks, which 11 million actually got processed. I mean, how did they get them out of the building? How did they get them? You know what I mean? And then, who are the distributors? Look. Let me walk you through the crime of this so you understand what these criminals actually did, so you have a better understanding of this whole thing. Okay, first, they had to get access to them. Then they had to have a systematic approach to removing those U.S. Treasury checks from the building. Then after that, they had to find, somebody to basically distribute them to who the runners were going to be to go ahead and sell them. Okay, it's the same thing with distribution with all these types of crimes. It's the same thing for a lot of legal businesses too. So the people who got the thing that's worth something sold it at a discount to somebody who's buying it. Then the person who bought it has to distribute it to people who are going to be runners to sell those things. In this case, U.S. Treasury checks. Those runners get a cut, and basically they'll go ahead and sell those U.S. Treasury checks to whoever they can that they feel is a safe, yada, yada. So the point is, there's a lot of players here. There's not just the U.S. Postal Service employees and the other people who bought them from them and then began distributing them. There's the distribution runners and the runners and the people they sold them to. So, 6 months in this type of situation might not be enough time to go find out, who bought them, who sold them, who legally knew that they were fraudulent, who didn't know they were fraudulent. And you're going to need time to trace all these little things down and figure out what the dealio is. So I guess what my point with this whole situation, a little shout over here. My point with this whole situation is, at the end of the day, we maybe need to give them more time to actually unseal the document to catch these other people. Now, at the same time, they may never complete what they hope to complete, and the thing stays sealed for the rest of time. Sometimes that's the best option for some particular cases. All right. With that said, I will catch you all at the next video where I go live and answer questions for free. Please remember to like. Please remember to subscribe. Head over to Google. Type in Disability Resolution Law Firm or Disability Resolution Florida and throw some stars up there. You get to choose how many, but I always love waking up to see those, so they do really pump me up. I guess we got some static on the microphone. Not sure why. Anyways, I will catch you at the next video where I go live. Please remember I go live on Mondays and Thursdays. I do 30 minutes where I answer questions for free. And then also, very important, please keep in mind, if you want a 1-hour consultation where I walk you through Social Security disability benefits, it's where I kind of like advise you on how to fix a problem, how to, begin the process, whatever. You already have an attorney. You want me to run hearing questions with you. Mini contract for the private consultation, 1 hour is below. I will catch you at the next video. Give me about 10, 15 minutes, and then I'll answer questions for free, and we'll rock and roll from there. Attorney Walter Hnot, America's most viewed, subscribed to, and clicked on Disability Attorney. We'll rock and roll from there. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.